Hello, this is Phoenix for Holistic Transformation, and this is Astrology with Phoenix. This is the astrology report for the 13th to 19th of May. There's a lot to get through, and I'm going to disappear so that we can look at everything in more detail. Righto, moving on with the report for this week. 13th of May to the 19th of May 2021. The themes for the week are Jupiter in Pisces. There's a new transition. We'll go into depth at the end of the video for this. Complex relationships in love and romance. The Venus activity this week is up and down, ending on a high though, which is a good thing. The question of staying in the comfort zone versus standing up, speaking out. It's our voice. Are we going to force changes now, or are we just going to sit back and watch things happen? Within that, there are conflicts of interest. What is trying to distract us, put us off our game? And then the shadow healing aspects. Chiron's wound for healing is the ego. Where's your wound? We'll look at that in just a moment, where you can find out where your placement is. The Sun and Lilith conjunct in Taurus are challenging our possessions and our feelings. At the same time this week, old relationship hurts can be coming up to challenge us, but they are coming up for clearance. If they're in a current relationship, expect resolution at the end of the week. For other things, it's going to be personal work and looking at how we let go of things. So Chiron's wound. Now, the placement of Chiron takes about 50 years to complete its orbit. But it doesn't spend equal time because it's a crazy elliptical orbit. It doesn't spend equal amounts in each sign. It spends a bulk of its time in Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Taurus and Gemini, and then a lot less time in all the other, where it can be 2 years or less. So the best thing to do is to look at your natal chart, or if you haven't looked at your natal chart, you can look it up for free on Cafe Astrology or one of the other websites like that, is to just Google where was Chiron on this date, and it will tell you. Because although I could give a chart of, say, 1968, it was in Aries till 1976 when it moved into Taurus. There's also the retrograde periods factored into that, so the actual day that you were born might not correlate with that specific sign, so it's best to look it up. Going through the wounds, Aries, the wound is the ego and self-esteem. Taurus, it's the body and vulnerability. Gemini, it's the throat, it's being silenced, being shut down. Cancer involves emotional pain. Leo is the heart and repression. Virgo's the inner critic and the self-worth and value. Libra involves relationships and trust issues. Scorpio is actually issues around previous death and mortal wounding that you're carrying forward. Sagittarius involves beliefs and mindset that may have been self-harming or harming towards others. Capricorn is a physical wound and can be the result of bondage. Aquarius is social acceptancy, is the wound. As in, are you being socially accepted? Don't want to be cast out. And Pisces is disconnection. It's effectively, all of these wounds are the antithesis of what the sign is all about. So the chart breakdown, again reading it out for those that are just listening, the Sun is at 22 degrees of Taurus, Moon is 11 degrees of Gemini, Mercury is 14 degrees of Gemini, Venus, this is at 11:11 today, Venus is 5 degrees of Gemini, Mars is 12 degrees Cancer, Jupiter is 29 degrees of Aquarius, but later this afternoon it moves into Pisces. Saturn's Aquarius 13 degrees, Uranus is 11 degrees in Taurus, Neptune in Pisces is at 22 degrees, Pluto is 26 degrees retrograde in Capricorn, and Lilith is still at 22 degrees in Taurus, turns to the 23rd degree later this week, and Chiron is now at 11 degrees in Aries. The main aspects or notes just for today is the Sun conjunct Lilith, both being trine Pluto, Moon conjunct Mercury, Moon trine Saturn, Mercury sextile Chiron, Venus square Jupiter, Mars square Chiron, Mars sextile Uranus, Saturn square Uranus. And Mercury Retroshade beginning on the 15th of May. It is crazy. And here's what the chart looks like for those of interest. These are just the major aspects. I've taken out the minor ones because the chart looks incredibly messy today. So now to try and break all of that down. Okay, so this week is a big week, and it's hard to pick a second day to hyper focus on. So I'm going to look at certain themes throughout the week, as well as talk about Jupiter and Pisces at the end, and briefly touch on the Mercury Retroshade period that begins this week. That's retroshade, not retrograde. We've got 2 weeks yet till our comms go a little weird. Well, just for today, we have many things going on. Looking at the makeup of the chart from the 12 things that I've mapped here, I mean, there are the nodes of the moon, there's Ceres, there's a couple of other things that could be counted, but in the 12 here, there's a Gemini and Taurus bias here with 3 in each. There's a lot of fixed signs, there's 5 in total, 4 mutable and 3 cardinal signs. What matters is what is where. And so the makeup of the chart is the inner planets are the ones driving us on our inside. You know, along this, the Sun and the Moon, then you've got Mercury, Venus and Mars. That's our core inner workings, revolving about our actions, our will, our love, our communications, how receptive we are. You know, do we actually listen? Are we busy-minded? Emotionally, how are we stable, and how are we outward facing? What's our self? All of those are the inner core workings. And then we hit the next level of planets, Jupiter and Saturn. And those ones are there to give us our outer senses. They present us with our boundaries and our expansive qualities to learn, develop, communicate with other people. Past these boundaries, you have the big steering planets, the comets and asteroids. So you have Uranus, Neptune and Pluto, you have Chiron, and Uranus, Neptune and Pluto are all intergenerational influences. Chiron is there in the wings, as is Black Moon Lilith, representing our shadow, and with Chiron it's revealing our wounds. This kind of map that we build up gives us often an internal conflict between our inner and outer worlds, and the astrological charts here reflect it. For today, we have the Sun in Taurus with Lilith beside each other. The Moon, Mercury and Venus are in the busy-minded energy of Gemini. You know, it's sometimes caught up in two minds, pulled in different directions. So we have this inner world in the mix of Taurus and Gemini. Okay, these are fixed earth, mutable air. And then we bring in Mars. Mars, our doing things influencer, it's getting our stuff done. and that's in the cardinal water of Cancer. This isn't an uncommon arrangement. It happens each year as the planets move around so fast to the outer planets. So this inner world is expressing, at least to me, about getting things done. I'm gonna communicate. I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna learn. I'm gonna make this shit happen. I'm getting things together. I'm gonna get things done. But as we go on, our wounded ego, that is Chiron, and Lilith, who's that shadow, repressed, suppressed self, present that FOMO experience, that fear of missing out. They can put the doubt in our mind. They can bring back these old failures into our head to try and stop us from doing the thing. Now, those middle planets, Jupiter and Saturn, that are moving slowly but moving well, Jupiter moves forward into Pisces this afternoon, so we'll go into depth at the end. Last week I touched on it very briefly, just because that was part of the cycle, that it will move from Aquarius into Pisces, then it will retrograde back, then it will go forward again. Saturn is there in Aquarius. Saturn in Aquarius wants to rock the boat. I think it's easy to look at the immediate world and say, especially in the UK, in Bristol, say there's not much kind of going on, there's not much rocking of the boat. Certainly looking at the recent UK elections, there's no shift of power, there's no real challenge to the elite or patriarchal influences, as it would appear. But if you look at the wider world, you see the conflicts all over the globe. You look at Colombia, you look at what's going on in Israel and Palestine, what's going on in Ireland, what's there in Myanmar. There's so many places that you can see things happening. But even if you just focus properly on countries like the USA and UK, you're going to find that there's lots of campaigning action behind it. Take HS2 protests, where the environment is of no concern to the people making money, to the Kill the Bill protests, to the, and this is happening on both sides of the pond, to this shutting down of an electorate that you're going to have to, it's almost like pay to vote. Whereas if you don't have your ID, photo ID that you have to pay the government to get, like a driving license or a passport, then you won't be able to vote. These things are being protested against. There's these things going on. It may depend on your choice of media whether you see or not, but these things are happening. There is that energy there. And then we move on to the noise from afar. These outer planets, the outer world, remembering that astrology is a metaphor for each individual's life and the interactions they're within. They're causing distraction, disruption, but at the same time showing us light in the way ahead. And it's difficult because we have to try and figure out what are the good influences and what are the bad influences. It's like we're trying to study for an exam, but your phone is right next to you, and all the notifications from Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok, whatever you're in, they're constantly pinging. They're prying for your attention. They're taking you off your game. And in this respect, Uranus can be in some ways like social media. The glyph of it has this big antenna. And in Taurus, it does fight for love and attention. It wants the selfies and the likes, the good stuff. And there are these rabbit holes to take you down. Look at me, me. It creates these illusions and can get stuck in deceptions, and it takes us out of reality, provides easy distractions. Neptune in Pisces, which is now it's in its third decan, which is the third 10-degree portion of the sign. Neptunal energy is about as highly evolved as it gets right now. Well, in 7 more degrees it goes critical, but I think you know what I mean. as it completes its zodiac cycle. Neptune in Pisces wants to look at the big issues. It wants to rise above any trivialities and puts its big fork into these higher issues. And that's going to be a conflict with Uranus. And then Pluto and Capricorn, which I've touched on a few weeks. This is a generational push, and it's going to be there. It's retrograde right now. It's giving us another chance to look at it, but at times it's going to be too much, because there's too much outer influence and pressure, and there's a really good time to be focusing inward. Go in so you can go out. It's a bit like when you need to top up your energy levels so you've got something to give. If you're going from an empty cup, you're always going to run out quicker. And that's effectively today. I know. Venus is going to be knocked back and forth this week, and I'll mention that as we go along. So as the week progresses, none of the placements really change. I mean, we start next week, we'll start with the Sun moving into Gemini, but apart from the Moon, things only progress by a degree or two here and there. Obviously the aspects strengthen and lessen, but the week ahead has some interesting angles or aspects as time moves on, so to focus on those rather than picking a particular day, because there are things happening on the 17th, 18th and 19th that all kind of lead into each other, which will get us through the end of the week, ups and downs. And it was a lot easier to deal with it this way than to pick another day. So whether this is how I do it moving forward, I don't know, but we'll see when we get to next week, because next week's going to be a big week. So with the 17th to the 19th, we have Mars squaring Chiron. Now, this presents an opportunity. Chiron and Mars will collide. They're squaring up. It's the injured asteroid, or comet, depending on how you want to classify it, with a wounded ego, facing off against Mars, which is in a position of Cancer, which is cardinal water. Cardinal water drives emotions out of us, and this wound is going to be staring us in the face. Do we fall flat on our faces like we did before with something? Is there someone or something that we're shying away from, as it cut deep last time that we experienced that or them? It's going to present an opportunity to heal that experience. The trick is going to be to define what is a bad experience that is a learning of I should not go there again, and what is a wound that helps, as I can do at this time. It's possible now. I can heal this, grow, learn from this, move forward. That's a big question here. At the same time, Venus is quite active. From the 17th and the 18th, Venus sextiles Chiron, semi-sextiles Uranus. Now Venus, the lover, is warm and giving and loves to receive good things back. It warms that Venusian heart. Venus, the heart of Venus. That wounded ego of Chiron will be looking for love and affection to help heal it. Shadow work to accept the wounded soul is useful here. What are your wounds? Looking back to Chiron's placement in your natal chart comes into play. You can see the slide from earlier, which holds information about which sign holds which wound, in conjunction with the ego that's already there for healing. At the same time, Venus, Saskatchewan, Sasquatches, sesquisquares Pluto. That can cause turbulence, as that ego can be killed in one instance by Pluto, just like that. And it can cause all the wrong signals to be read. The green eyes of envy can turn a loving act into an act of deceit. We can read the signals wrong. So whilst Venus is positive with Chiron and Uranus, that position with Pluto could cause difficulty, could be misreading of signals. You or the other person could be getting angry and upset over things that aren't actually true. So just no matter what, remember that you are loved. There could be, for the 17th and 18th, could be a bit up and down. But then towards the end of the 18th, and definitely for the 19th, Venus then trines with Saturn. This is a really helpful position because Saturn governs rules and boundaries, and here it's going to give support. Where are our boundary issues concerning the heart? Things should come to a positive outcome. Whereas Venus and Saturn are opposing forces, it's almost like the heart versus the head. In this placement, they can reach a compromise for a better outcome, and lasting and positive changes can be made. So ride through whatever happens on the 17th and 18th. If you need to run in a different room, cry, count to 10, whatever, do it, because you can make that change. You can put the positivity in place, lasting change from late 18th, definitely through the 19th, when Venus trines Saturn. Now looking at the Mercury Retroshade periods, on the 15th or thereabouts, we enter a 2-week period before Mercury goes retrograde. So the retroshade or pre-retrograde period here is not the same as retrograde motion. It is the shadow looming before, and there's also the shadow that's after the retrograde motion. The pre-retrograde period, as I say, lasts about 2 weeks prior to retrograde occurring. You can start to feel the beginning of Mercury retrograde's effects. There can be uncertainty in feelings, which in conjunction with what's going on with Venus, it may be hard to understand if that's what's going on, if it's Mercury shadow or if it's one of the Venus aspects. People and events from the past can return, but don't forget we have Venus and Saturn to help us at this time. The retrograde happens, I think, on the 31st, so we're not there yet, but you may start feeling some of the effects about it. Got a full moon to get through first. No! Now on to Jupiter in Pisces. So, as I said earlier about Neptune, the same is true here. Pisces is the final point of the journey. Although not as far ahead as Neptune, we are entering the first degree of the first decan. For the next 2 months, Jupiter remains in Pisces before the retrograde occurs. Pisces' home planets are Jupiter and Neptune, so it has home advantage here. Jupiter in Pisces is an artistic, spiritual and religious placement. This is a placement that offers hope and transformation. As Aquarius shakes things up, Pisces tried to swim in the waters that Aquarius laid out for it. As a dualistic sign though, Pisces can either sink or swim. So some of us are going to sink and others are going to swim. There's an opportunity to learn here, to develop. Think about the things that Aquarius's time has offered to us. Working in unison, side by side, no matter who you are, where you come from. The fight for Black Lives Matter, for Palestine, for drinking water, for recognition of gender, less hours per week working, universal basic income. All of these things are to be transmuted in Jupiter and Pisces, following the water coming through from that water barrier Aquarius. So for the next few years, albeit not during the retrograde period, we will have Jupiter and Neptune as an alliance of sorts, as they will both be in their evolutionary placements the visionary and the mage, the expander, both working towards a better unison of humankind. For the bad part, the downside of Pisces is that when it's not clear or operating well, it can hate things, it can hate change, it can tell lies, exaggerate for its own reasons. And the patriarchy is not going to roll over and just let equality happen. We're going to have to fight for it. Jupiter is expansion and higher learning, and we need to learn now. The thing is that rebellion and uprising is going to happen when Pluto turns into Aquarius. It appears generationally inevitable. So the more suffering now that continues unopposed, the more oppression and repression, the worse Pluto and Aquarius is going to be. It's a natural cycle. We put the work in now, and it will get easier in the long haul. Some in power are already beginning to realise this, and are making some concessions, which is one way of progressing this, but as we know, the downside of Pisces is that it can tell lies and exaggerate, so we don't know whether we can trust all the people that are beginning to make concessions. We're going to have to use our best judgment as we move forward and not get distracted. Next week we are going to have the Sun returning to Gemini, Saturn going retrograde, a full moon lunar eclipse, and the lead up to the second Mercury Retrograde of 2021. So there'll be nothing much to report on next week, I'm sure. You made it all the way through to the end of this video. Great, thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe, and follow me on Twitter, Facebook, or the usual social media. This is Phoenix saying goodbye.